Mamain. I want to tell you a poem called Mamain. And so you need to know that Mamain is this place in Connemara in Galway in Ireland. It's a passageway, a mountain peak passage where St. Patrick supposedly went to bless Connemara. But far before there were Christians in that part of the world, it was a place where pilgrims would go to visit a sacred well. Since the 5th century at least, people made a pilgrimage to this holy place. And the word, mamain, it means the pass of the birds. And so you imagine yourself up there, this small passageway under a great big sky. And the other thing you need to know about this poem, it's by David Whyte, and so many of you know I'm a big fanboy of David Whyte's, and I resist. You should know how many Sundays I resist sharing a David Whyte poem. But this one I'm going for it. So it's a poem by David Whyte that he wrote for his beloved friend John O'Donohue, who died young and mysteriously. Be infinitesimal. Be infinitesimal under that sky. A creature even the sailing hawk misses, a wraith among the rocks where the mist parts slowly. Recall the way mere mortals are overwhelmed by circumstance, how great reputations dissolve with infirmity, and how you, in particular, live a hair's breadth from losing everyone you hold dear. Then look back down the path as if seeing your past self, and then south over the hazy blue coast as if present to a wide future. Remember the way you are all possibilities you can see. The way you are all possibilities you can see, and how you live best as an appreciator of horizons, whether you reach them or not. Admit that once you have got up from your chair and opened the door, once you have walked out into the clean air toward that edge and taken the path up high beyond the ordinary, you have become the privileged and the pilgrim, the one who will tell the story and the one coming back from the mountain who helped to make it. And I think it was when he shared that poem that David was talking about sitting at the pub down below those mountain ranges where he and John O'Donohue had spent many, many hours walking. But every time they'd have a walk, he said John would always want them to go get a pint at the pub afterward, and so they had many a pint as well. And it was over pints at the pub, looking up at those beautiful mountains, that David was talking about his father being ill and trying to figure out what to give him, a gift that he could support him with. And he was doing better financially than his father was. He could come up with something to offer. And he said a number, I don't remember what it was, 500 quid or something like that. And it was definitely in quid. And then John O'Donohue replied back. It was one of those pints conversations. David, go against yourself. And he shouted back at the bar. They were starting to make a scene. All right, 1,000 quid. No, go against yourself, David. All right, 2,000 quid. No, David, go against yourself. And you can just imagine these two brilliant brotherly friends shouting at the bar And I think he ended up giving 4,000 or 5,000 quid to his father. Go against yourself. You've been allowing me to wrestle in front of you. I was going to say we've been wrestling with, but really I think you've been permitting me graciously to wrestle with in front of you my thoughts about these parables of seeds that Jesus talked about. So we're going against ourselves talking about Jesus this month. And I went back and I used a class. It's a requirement in Unitarian Universalist ministry to study the Old and New Testaments, as they're sometimes called, the Jewish and Christian scriptures. And then most of us UU ministers go off and forget all about all of that. But I've been using that Masters of Divinity to read John Dominic Crossan, who has a quest for the historical Jesus. He has this project. He's trying to. His life's work was trying to find which of all of these fragments, these little pieces that we have preserved, mostly in decades and even centuries after Jesus lived, where was the actual guy? What can we find how can we get closest to what he actually said? And so he's digging through, as we look at the ways that the stories are told through the different Gospels, he says, well, this analysis, anytime there's an analysis of a parable, that's clearly out. That's some Greeks later on going back and interpreting. He says that you can find it in the parables that he tells because they're similar to, but they're different. There's a distinct style from the dominant rabbinical teaching patterns of the day, just the linguistic form of the parable. So he gets in there. And what he concludes about these seed parables, and I loved this idea that the parables are the primary and immediate expression of Jesus' own experience of God. Rather than being about an eschatological claim about how things are going to end up or another kind of theological attack on the dominant traditions of the day, he says they are the ontologico-poetic articulation of the kingdom's inbreaking upon himself. The ontologico-poetic, that is the attempt to express through words that which cannot be expressed. The ground of being. The kingdom's inbreaking upon himself, that religious experience of communion with the infinite. To take the path up high beyond the ordinary and become the one who will tell the story and the one who helped to make it. And in this attempt to express the infinite, to try and ineffably say what it is to experience God, Jesus may have said something like, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It's the smallest of seeds, but when it's grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. No, it's not how mustard seeds work. They don't become trees. It's not the smallest of seeds. Carrot seeds are significantly smaller. I don't know. We don't know what the heck he was thinking or what got lost in those, hundreds of years from oral to written tradition, but yes, it's true. All the potential needed for mustard bushes to exist all over and forever. All the potential needed lies in a single tiny seed. Just like every cell in every one of our bodies contains all the information needed to produce the entirety of our being and everyone who will follow after. Or how every given moment contains all that's ever been leading up to it, all necessary for now to be as it is, and every possible thing to come already present in the mustard seed of one tiny moment. How the truest general principles of the universe are clearest in the most specific stories, in balloons, in a conversation with a friend over pints, or how a congregation contains all that's led to who it is now, holds in one moment all the fecund possibility of what could be to come. This is that religious experience that John Dominic Crossan's imagining Jesus trying to convey, the awe-inducing experience of the kingdom's inbreaking upon himself, of the infinite in the infinitesimal. He says the sower and the mustard seed, these parables, they articulate the gift of the kingdom's advent and the joyful surprise of its experience. Despite all the problems of sowing, there is abundant harvest. Despite the smallness of the seed, there is the shady peacefulness of the grown plant. The joyful surprise that anything exists at all. You know, if you did a purely materialistic, rational business calculation about the future of religious communities in our society, I don't think any savvy MBA would recommend making the investment that we're talking about making in this community. So go against yourself. Go against yourself. Remember the way you are all possibilities you can see, and how you live best as an appreciator of horizons, whether you reach them or not. Amen, and blessed be.